Thank you for having me. It's great to be back, and Kent, I appreciate your introduction to best practices. You don't have to tell jokes, though. I put my foot in my mouth plenty. Yesterday, we had lunch with about 60 international executives that were in Baton Rouge, and sitting at the table, we were eating Raising Cane's. They had it ordered for everybody, which I thought was appropriate. Sitting across from me, two folks from Saudi Arabia. I said, isn't it great that you get to taste some of our great food in Baton Rouge? You're getting some Raising Cane's. And the woman sitting across from me said, well, we actually have Raising Cane's in Saudi Arabia. It's like, my gosh, that's incredible. My jaw is on the ground. I said, well, it just goes to show the fingers of Baton Rouge touch the world. And then I realized that probably doesn't translate well. So I apologize for now telling all of you how I messed that up in front of an international audience yesterday. It was great. Our work in economic development is led by a great board of directors, and I just want to thank Helena Cunningham, who is our Brac board chair this year. If you want to just stand up and be recognized, we are thrilled by her leadership. We have a large board, so Helena gets to corral a group of about 60 folks. So to corral that board is challenging, but we hopefully do so as a great staff. We have a number who are in the room, about 30 folks strong, and I would say they are the best in economic development in the U.S., at least in Louisiana, and they work every day on behalf of the business community, all of you here in Baton Rouge, and are a resource to you, as we've seen during the course of the last 2 years, especially in the pandemic, when we have been daily and hourly, it feels like sometimes, kind of working hard to make sure that we are a resource to the business community through these challenging times. But that's not what I'm here to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about where we are as a community and where we are heading. So I want you to just, in your mind for a second, step back from how you think about Baton Rouge or our 9-parish region and visualize the map of the U.S., okay? And if you can visualize Baton Rouge on that map for me for a second. Now think about the communities that are roughly the size of Baton Rouge, say 500,000 in population to about 1.5 million or 2 million, right? So look out in your mind's eye about 1,000 miles away from Baton Rouge, right? As you think about competition in your companies, those are the competition that we have as a community for Baton Rouge. These are communities we have to think about how they're operating in a complex economic development network and a system. So the course of how we operate as an organization is really try to think about how those groups compete with us as a community. So think about these questions. So how do we unlock the future potential for the people of Baton Rouge, more folks to choose to build their businesses, their careers, or their families here in the Baton Rouge area? How do we help make sure that more bright students from around the nation or around the world choose to find their way to our region's campuses, but more than that, choose to engage with the businesses in our community here in this room, choosing to stay here and find a path for how to set up their future life here in our community? How does that happen? How do we make sure that this is a buzzing and vibrant place where entrepreneurs or researchers at our universities take moonshot opportunities for the future right here in Baton Rouge and make sure that those companies or those researchers have the stable footing that it takes to make that possible? What does it look like to make sure that everyone in our region feels like they have access to the benefits of this economy for all of their diverse backgrounds to ensure that that is true? Or how do we make sure that we take our blinders off or our rose-colored glasses to see Baton Rouge as it is, good and bad, and understand how we make sure that we take those challenges head on to ensure that the livability of Baton Rouge is dynamic and compelling and competitive, again, in that map of the U.S. as you think about our landscape, how we look and operate. And those are the challenges that we want to think about. We've been asking ourselves many of those questions over the last 18 months. And as we've all kind of gone through the pandemic, we've tried to understand how has our own business changed, how has our world been disrupted, how have our careers been changed. We also think that economic development has been shifted during this period. It's super important that I share with all of you how we recognize how that changes and how that changes how all of you also think about economic development and how you think about the Baton Rouge metropolitan area. As we talk about that work, we also recognize that the attitude that we heard from companies through our visits with all of our investors, current and future investors, over the last year as we've been fundraising, what we've heard more than anything is a sense of urgency, a recognition that I'm sure all of you can feel in your own kind of mind right now is, Baton Rouge really needs to step it up. We actually joke internally, we use an acronym of LFG. I'm not going to translate that for you. But the idea of Bring It came from that attitude. That we have to really have a sense of urgency about who we are as a community and whether we're going to step it up, whether we're truly going to bring it. And so Bring It is an attitude. It's an idea for how economic development should frame all of our work, all of your work, and how you engage with us to try to accomplish this. Now, for those of you who are sitting in the middle, you're not going to be able to read the slides that I'm going to show y'all. But for those of you who are sitting closer to a screen, congratulations, y'all chose and won the lottery of like seeing some of the little visuals and text a little easier. I'm going to try to click through these for you. You're not going to be able to read these, but what we recognized, we had not updated our mission and vision statement in close to 20 years. What we thought through in this process when we hired Ernst & Young as a strategic planning firm to help us think through this is, what is our purpose? Why do we exist as an organization? Well, that is truly to accelerate economic opportunity in the Baton Rouge area for everyone. Make sure that we think through how that works. But as a team and as a board is that we have to operate with a bias toward action and to make sure that we think about how we are more aggressive every day for a board or our investors or our volunteers to drive these goals that we're going to lay out. Now, in the last 6 years of our work, I would have normally said 5, but pandemic added a year. This is just a visual of some of the deal flow we've had in the Baton Rouge area. 93 projects, over 6,000 permanent jobs announced by those projects, $300 million in annual permanent payroll sloshing around the economy, benefiting all of you. Amazingly, $14 billion in capital investment. Just last year, our best year ever for committed capital from projects, $8 billion, close to $8 billion in announced capital projects in the Baton Rouge area last year alone. We actually think that the next 2 years are going to look and feel a lot like what 2013 felt like. For those of you who can remember, it was a period of sort of huge amounts of investment, job creation, but also labor shortages and the challenges that come from an expanding economy. You can also see like Brac continues to get great recognition nationally as one of the best economic development organizations in the country. And I want you all to feel proud that the team and the board doing this work is among the best there is. And we continue to try to make sure that we pursue excellence in the work of what we do because you expect it of us, and we got to step it up. We also, and again, I don't expect you to read this, have been working on a lot of major issues over the last 6 years around quality of life, around STEM, talent, education-related issues, as well as beautification, litter, enhancements, a lot of that work that it takes to try to do that work. Everything that we do as an organization comes with a goal, a tactic, and a metric of how we measure what we're doing. And you can see those in our annual reports, our bi-weekly newsletters that go out to track our progress against goals. This gives you kind of a sense of some of that work, such as transportation. 6 years ago, there was maybe $300 million of committed capital for traffic solutions in the Baton Rouge area. Today, that's about $1.5 billion that our community has really been pushing hard collectively to try to be committed to try to drive solutions to these problems. Or around education, we had a significant amount of new school choices announced significantly in Baton Rouge. About 18 of those now that have been announced in ways to introduce school choices in much different ways across the Baton Rouge area with a lot of the partners here in this room who have made that possible. Or around talent, you may not know this, but our staff, even this afternoon, are doing a talent tour for an incoming doctor who's trying to decide if they want to move their family to Baton Rouge. We do talent tours. We've done about 500 of those over the last 6 years. We have about an 85% hit rate when a company gives an offer that the person chooses to move here from somewhere else because they fall in love with the community that they find once they get here and discover it. And so we're that community tour guide to help you find the talent that you need to succeed. So that's been what we've been doing for the last 5 years. I wanted to give you that context so you can think about what we do next. Now let's talk about our data. So we call this the section of this presentation. We got to really dive into the challenges as well as our opportunities. Now in one chart, remember that mind's eye picture of the U.S. that I asked you to visualize a moment ago, right? The cities on the left that you can't read because the font is about 9 point are about 40 different cities, roughly our size, in the southeast portion of the U.S. And I'm happy to share these with you. In fact, a lot of our data is going to be back if you want to pick up copies of this after the presentation. On the right-hand side, that little kind of spiderweb-looking graph is 6 different categories of data that are Baton Rouge in a snapshot relative to those 39 other communities. And so you can see whether that's innovation or entrepreneurship, factors related to prosperity, things related to the talent pipeline of Baton Rouge, or our connectedness, our livability, or our inclusiveness as a community. These are measurable things that you can compare to these 39 other cities, which how handy is that? So when you take off those rose-colored glasses, you see it as it is. This is what you see. We had the 6th best data for innovation and entrepreneurship inputs to try to make sure that we have the opportunities to have a vibrant and dynamic economy. On prosperity, we're about 14th when you aggregate the data for that category. Roughly middle of the pack for connectedness and talent. But you'll see that there is virtually no pie slice around inclusivity or around livability. What that recognizes is that we were 39th, respectively, and 40th for those two categories of inclusivity and livability relative to those other communities. So when you think about economic development, if you can't see the entire complex web of what it takes to be competitive, that's what this looks like when we think about it. And we've been doing strategic planning, really spending a lot of time thinking about this kind of broad set of data. But I want to show you 4 charts that I think we have to collectively own and understand. So if you all paid attention last year when the census data came out, you saw that we actually grew as a metro region. The last 2 years of data, we have net positive in migration, right? We all want to make sure that more people move in than move out in order to make sure that our companies can compete and our communities are vibrant across the 9 parishes. But we would point out that among the age group of 25 to 44-year-olds, we have had 6 out of the last 7 years of data net out migration. So that's the negative news. The good news is the numbers are not necessarily so inordinately hard to overcome. You see, like the last year in 2019 was 1,000 net more moved out than moved in that age range. That was 2019 data. We have 55,000 students at our colleges and universities. That's a record number this year for enrollment across all of our colleges and universities. If we simply lean in and do a better job just in making sure that they find internships or apprenticeships at your businesses every year, and you kind of give you a map of how to make sure you're doing that, that is a tide that you can turn without even thinking about increasing in-migration into Baton Rouge, which we need to. The second chart that I would show you has to do with where job creation has come from over the last 6-7 years of data. If you could read that, you would see that that long line across the top is job creation from the construction sector, led job growth in the capital region over this period of time. So let's kind of take that snapshot as a 7-year snapshot. Well, that's awesome. We're seeing job creation. Actually, we're seeing job creation generally across a wide variety of industry sectors. But what was alarming is Baton Rouge, out of the 40 cities, had the number one community for all job growth really coming from construction. No other community had construction as the number one source of job growth in their communities. Well, what does that tell you? We need a more diverse economy that's contributing to more diverse base of overall job creation. Not to say that we don't want more, and we will see more industrial construction job expansions in the future. We just need to make sure that we see more sources of job creation in other sectors. Now, I mentioned economic inclusion, and Daryl Johnson, who's in the back, is our manager of diversity and inclusion, spends a lot of time with us thinking about that with our diversity and inclusion committee. This chart is a correlation graph. So if you take the index, we were 39th out of 40 for economic inclusion. You take the index of that set of data and then correlate it to job creation, right? In the business of economic development, you want to see how all these communities are doing at job creation. This line of all the 6 data sets we looked at had the clearest correlation. When you're doing better at economic inclusion, you see higher overall rates of job growth in those cities that we compare ourselves to. So up into the top right, you have Fayetteville, you have Asheville, you have Nashville. What that shows us is when you have more folks able to benefit from access to the economy, you also see overall faster rates, higher rates of job growth in those communities. That is the connection to say this is not just something that is a social concern or a moral imperative. It is an economic development imperative to think about the connection between economic inclusion and the work of economic development. And the last one, which is, of course, kind of a comic relief line, Kent, we are the 66th largest community in the country. As a metro region, out of the 75 largest places in America, we had the 4th worst traffic in 2021. That is the slope of that line and how wacky that looks in one graphic. That should not be that way. Hey, if you want to have some positives, we just beat San Francisco, guys. We have worse traffic. We jumped them between 2020 and 21. Now, this is, of course, during a period of the pandemic. That might decline as reopenings accelerate in communities that have been more locked down than we have. Unfortunately, it wasn't that great pre-pandemic either. I think we were about 13th in the data in 2019. So these are challenges that we have to own and act upon to continue to drive things like livability to get better. So we're ready to bring it, guys. I want to share with you a little advertisement on this. All right. Y'all ready to bring it? I'm going to show you what that means. In a talent strategy we've been thinking about, economic development has to shift after the pandemic. We have historically focused on business development and really public policy initiatives to enhance the probability that we see more business investment. Well, we recognize in a world of remote work where an office is more hybrid than not many times, and a worker can take a job in Seattle just as easy as down the street. We have to think about what it means from a talent strategy to shift the work of an organization like ours to think more about what it takes to compete for talent to drive economic development. In many ways, we use the phrase that talent today is the currency of economic development more than any other factor, and how we influence those changes are critical. Now, when we think about the work that we do, we recognize that we have to have metrics for how we accomplish these goals and new tactics we try to embark upon that make it likely that we'll succeed as we set these big overarching goals. Now, many of you made commitments to these goals. This is what you're funding Brac and its team and our board and our volunteers to work on between now and the year 2026. First, around talent, we set a goal that we want to see our young professional population, 25 to 44-year-olds, increase by at least 5 percentage points. And what that looks like is we need to be more aggressive about helping students in our universities connect to jobs here in our community by downloading things like the Handshake app. It's free if you don't use it. You should put your jobs and internships on it tomorrow and tap into the entire labor market that are in our colleges and universities. We need to do things like our Talent Action Collaborative, which is trying to hardwire the connections between education and business, like we see in Jacksonville and in Nashville that have been doing this for 15 years through their Chamber of Commerce to make sure that there's a deep, hardwired connection across our region about how that happens and how they look forward to the jobs of the future. It also is things like Baton Rouge has not done, Brac has not done, which is outbound talent marketing to say our story to the rest of the country with that hard advertising dollars and public relations dollars being spent to get outside of our region and talk about the industries of the future that are available here in the Baton Rouge area. Related to diversifying our economy into other industry sectors, we've already seen this year alone probably 10 of our current 60 prospects are in transitional energy or renewables, as almost every company up and down the industrial corridor, if you aren't aware of this, are making net zero carbon commitments, and they're thinking about what that means to create new enterprises, new industry opportunities, to create jobs of the future for a very long horizon. This is coming and it's already here in many ways with investments that have been happening this year, but not just in transitional energy, which is really bolting on to an existing industry strength. We see it also in the technology sector with companies like Rural Sourcing that's just located here. Baton Rouge Entrepreneurship Week a few weeks ago, we saw a significant number of tech companies building and growing here in the Baton Rouge area. We've also seen more opportunities around healthcare and life sciences. If you saw the announcement just 2 weeks ago, Pennington just opened the doors of their Metamore Institute, a world-leading bariatric center where they're doing surgeries based here. They had 380 surgeries and 6,000 patients come through last year trying to find out how we can be a world-leading center in that work. Imagine pharmaceutical companies learning about how they build products to market, bring products to market based on the capabilities that we've already seen built there. That is what that looks like, and Brac has to really be much more aggressive about investing in the services to help accelerate that activity. Under an inclusive economy, this is something that has not been a pillar at Brac's in prior 5-year plans, and it must be, and shame on us that it hasn't been more specifically. So what can we do at the intersection of economic inclusion and economic development? Well, we think that has a lot to do with disinvested communities, seeing more reinvestment, leveraging federal tools to make that possible, or doing something that Darrell and ExxonMobil launched just last week. We made an announcement that we will be, this fall, building something that we saw in Cincinnati, a minority business accelerator inside of the Baton Rouge Area Chamber, looking for minority-owned businesses with $500,000 in revenue, and bringing together in cohorts to help scale them from $500,000 to $5 million to $100 million. What does it look like to see that level of capital creation, and when that occurs, seeing that reinvested in our communities? Around livability, the fourth of our 4 goals, of course, we think about traffic. This is a legislative session this year that there is already conversations around the new Mississippi River Bridge. Now, if I asked you, and I'm not going to do this, but if I asked you how confident that we're going to see a bridge in the next 5 years moving on track, the Business Report poll yesterday suggested that maybe 50% of you would raise your hands saying, yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's going to happen, Adam. That's ridiculous. Well, in fact, we would tell you that that's probably likely that you're going to see a design-build contract if all the pieces continue to fall in place in the next 3 years. In fact, we just released a public policy commentary this morning. I'd encourage you to go to our website and read. That lays out the time frame, how the pieces fall into place for all of those things to happen between now and the course of getting that. We hope to be wheels on the road of a new bridge, ideally by 2031, if all these pieces fall into place to get us on that track. We also are more confident than ever that the pieces are falling in place for a passenger rail project between Baton Rouge and New Orleans with the new federal infrastructure bill, with Canadian Pacific buying KCS's line and Amtrak adding it to their strategic plan to make sure that our super region has more infrastructure to grow. But I would tell you, and I've been kind of holding the punchline on this, that the goal that we should shoot for is not one of those things to be the measurable outcome. In fact, it should be that we, all of you, all of us, have a higher perception of ourselves 5 years from now than we do today. We did a perception study at Baton Rouge back in December to prove what all of you and all of us already knew is we, in many cases, are our own worst enemies. We are often too negative on ourselves when there are a lot of things going in the right direction, when a lot of the communities that we compete with have many of the same challenges that we have, and those positives that are heading in the right direction, that you are armed with the knowledge that they are occurring here, so that you express those to each other with confidence, which we know that our peers do, frankly, at a higher rate than all of us do. Now, we love to beat up our football coaches or our sports coaches. Great, keep doing that. But be more positive about your community. It matters to economic development. It matters to talent migration. And the more work that we can do, thank you, David, the more the work that we can do to gain confidence in that, we will be better at economic development. And that radiates outside of our region to make it more likely that people are confident to come here. Now, not only have we done the research to see the data, we want to make sure that you can see that data more frequently. We will be putting out annually, and our first one will come out later this year, annual dashboards of the data. It's about 60 indicator data points that you'll be able to see migration over time of these indicators. Where did we start in 2022, 2021, and where will we get to by the time this 5-year plan concludes in 2026? So I would say today, this is upon all of you. This is not me and a 30-person staff or even the 1,500 investors of Brac. It is all of our community if we're going to succeed at changing the dynamics of Baton Rouge for the future. And that's why we say we're ready to bring it. Are you? Thank you for having me. Yes, please. If you have questions, we'll take a few. I think we have a few minutes.
Adam, there's been a lot of pushback on the $500 million and the governor's proposing for the new bridge. And everything I read about it, I never read anything that it's important beyond the boundaries of this area that you encompass, or even the state. And this reflects on us nationwide.
Absolutely.
And I think, how can we respond to it across the country to bring the importance back to Baton Rouge?
So,
what do people think about Baton Rouge and Louisiana, where they sit time after time, where they get killed on the other side of the river, as recently happened? What can we do?
So the question is, with regard to the $500 million that's in the budget, that we know and feel that concern in Baton Rouge, but does the rest of the state, does the rest of the nation recognize how important this project is for all of us? Part of the reason we put out the policy commentary today is to help our legislators, but the whole state legislature, have something that they can grab onto that says, here's why this is a nationwide problem. No other community in the country, frankly, except 3 others, have the traffic challenges that we have. Nowhere in Louisiana is that data true, right? So this is the reason the governor put up the $500 million, is recognizing it is an outsized problem here in the Baton Rouge area, and it is every portion of our state's concern that this is true. We've called this a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get this right. It is. A lot of the pieces, though, have been putting in place by the legislature, by DOTD over the last few years. We have, by this summer, 3 bridge locations will be announced. The engineering is already funded and underway. That same firm will keep going to finish the constructability environmentals that are necessary. That'll take about 2 years once they have the bridge locations set. The money being in place helps us go out next year to find public-private partners that are going to be the development partners to build and own this with us as a public-private project. All of those are the things that shows it's real. It's what we want to make sure we documented. We actually had in Lake Charles, where I'm from, the opinion page of the Lake Charles American Press. The same type of editorial happened in Acadiana. They had a poll that showed that Acadiana is supporting, a 50% response of the Acadiana poll supported the Baton Rouge Bridge project being funded by this legislative session. The good news is others are with us. What we need to do is make sure we galvanize them, and part of the work that Brac is doing is to make sure that we're reaching out to our other partners around the state, reaching out through them to their legislators to try to help make sure they hear that. I would encourage you to take that information we put out today, forward it to legislators, forward it to your friends, and make sure folks hear about why this is necessary outside of the Baton Rouge area.
In the past, Brac has emphasized quality of life, and one of the key factors was trash around Baton Rouge. How's that coming from your perspective?
Yeah.
How are we doing?
So the question was, the factors are, we talked about in the past, have been related to quality of life, quality of place, but especially regarding issues of litter. I would bet if I sort of raise hands if you think that litter has gotten worse. Just show of hands. That is our sense too, right? So the mayor's office in Baton Rouge is drafting, and I think near to complete, with a litter plan for Baton Rouge. We're eager to see when that comes out to address this inside of the city parish of Baton Rouge. At the same time, these conversations have been ones that we've been trying to carry up to the Capitol. The governor's office just created a statewide task force to try to improve the state's own focus on this effort. About 20 some odd attendees or participants from across the state, from across business, government, and nonprofits are convening in working groups to do that. They're using as a model, if you'd like to go look at it, Pennsylvania and South Carolina, who have very comprehensive, way more comprehensive than Louisiana has, master plans for how to tackle litter across the state. And that challenge, I'm glad the book is about plastic litter. That's great. The challenges of litter cleanup and litter prevention and litter education require a very comprehensive approach. So we're excited to see that our push and our commentary and our advocacy is starting to catch fire, it would seem. But the problem is enormous, and we are way behind, as you can tell, as a community. The good news is states that have tackled this, and we saw examples of that on the task force meetings, are cleaner today than they were 5 and 10 years ago once they really engage as a state and as communities into the fight, which is what we need to be doing as Baton Rouge. Now, if you're asking what can we do as business owners, 2 things or 3 things that I would highlight. 1, have a trash can outside of your workplace, especially if you're retail where folks can throw away trash. 2 is encourage cleanup off efforts outside of your business on a relatively frequent basis. Which isn't fun, but it's important to do. We're going to do a cleanup drive project on College Drive to try to demonstrate this later this year for the business owners along College Drive. If you're in here, we'd love to have you come talk to us afterwards. And the third big thing is to try to make sure that you're embracing the cleanup efforts of your neighborhood associations. Some of you maybe on Nextdoor and have seen the work that's been done around Tigertown. Partner with those groups, spend time volunteering, and engage, because a lot of this is also just getting out, bringing young people to that fight, and doing cleanup and getting our hands dirty to do that work. Thank you all for having me.